people asked, why did you put Rasulullah on number one as the most influential person in the entire history? And he said Rasulullah was supremely successful, not just in the religious realm, but also in the secular realm, i.e. in the political side of things.
Why did he choose Medina? Were there not people living there already, especially the Jewish tribes? What was the negotiations?
So that's a very interesting question. And he actually argues that the constitution that the Holy Prophet authored himself was the first constitution ever in the entire world. This is a huge statement for him to make. Everyone was able to practice their religion freely. So for example, the Jews of the time were able to freely practice.
And if they were to commit a crime, that they will be judged on their own books.
So
should we consider ourselves to be one ummah? Or is it just based on the walaya of Amir al-Mu'mineen? Adhamullah ajurana wa ajurakum. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah wa barakatuh. And welcome to Shia Vibes, the podcast that discusses different themes, topics and subjects in regards to the Shia community. Now, without further ado, our guest today is going to be discussing political leadership of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in regards to how he made an Islamic state, the different techniques he used as a leader, and what he introduced to the Ummah and also the Arab society, inshallah, to discuss more in detail to help you guys understand and where we can be with our politics, whether it is within our own communities, within our own countries or internationally. Inshallah, we'll discuss this and more with our guest today, Mr. Mohammad Ali Muraj. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam, Sayyid Mohsin. How are you?
I'm very well. Adhamullah ajurana wa ajurakum.
And to you, Adhamullah ajurakum, inshallah.
Inshallah. A quick introduction for those who don't know you. So first of all, you're a graduate in accountancy and finance, which is your background. But furthermore, it's nice to know you've been studying at ICAS, which is where I studied also. And your thesis, you're doing your master's in political...
The thesis, the dissertation that I'm doing is titled The Constitution of Medina, whether or not that was a political arrangement where the Holy Prophet had no choice, or was it somewhere that he had power to enforce the constitution, i.e. did he have actual power or not?
I see. What's the difference? So one is like, I've got, followers, a fellowship, maybe a military, so I can take a land and create a state, and politically, is that with what, lobbying and...
So political arrangement in the sense that, was he just a figurehead of Medina, and did he have actual power within the tribes of Medina? Did he have enforceable power? So if he said something, one of the clauses in the constitution was he would be the last arbitrator. So if there's a problem between tribes, he would be the last judge. Now, was that an enforceable position? Would people actually listen to him? Or was he more of a figurehead where he can say whatever he wants, but people will continue doing what they want?
Why do you think it's important to discuss such a topic like this for your dissertation? Specifically, how does it relate to us today?
Politics, unfortunately, sometimes we associate it as a dirty word, right?
Politicians
or politics. Let's stay away from politics. But Rasulullah shows us that he is the head of state. When we look at Rasulullah, we only look at him as what?
A prophet,
as a prophet, as a spiritual
divine,
leader. He would worship all night, fast all day with the spiritual dimension.
Gave us Islamic laws.
Exactly. But we forget to understand that actually he was a commander-in-chief. He was a political leader. He was a head of state. He had actual power within the governing, the state of Medina. And that's actually really important for us to understand, what is my role in my society? Now, do I also get involved in politics, or do I shun it, saying, oh no, politics is not for Islam, let the other people do it?
So, was he actually the head of state? I mean, we could say he was the leader of the Muslims. If people were to see it as today, we could say he was one of the Grand Maharaja, Obviously, he's a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're not taking that away from him. But relatable today, he was, someone that everyone looked towards spiritually someone that they believed his word was divine decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have many in history to come out with these cultish, groups and movements claiming to be divinely appointed and so forth. And they have people who would follow and donate money and so forth. Is it, of such, or is it more of that he was actually, he was the head of state. He had territory, he had a border, military, policing, law being enforced. And there was a lot more to do with the leadership of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam than people can actually relate to.
Michael Hart, an author, published a book in 1978, which I'm sure many of us have already come across.
Okay.
And the book is titled The 100 Most Influential People in History. And at number one, as we all know, was Rasulullah himself.
Sallallahu
Alaihi Wasallam. May peace and blessing be upon him and his family.
Indeed.
Now, as part of that list, you have scientists like Newton, you have Einstein, you have other religious leaders, for example, Isa alayhi salam, you have Buddha, you have St. Paul, so on and so forth. But people asked, why did you put Rasulullah on number one as the most influential person in the entire history? And he said Rasulullah was supremely successful, and these are his words, supremely successful, not just in the religious realm, but also in the secular realm, i.e. in the political side of things. William Montgomery Watt, again, an Orientalist, an academic scholar of the religion of Islam, written many books. And he, in his words, says that the Holy Prophet was a far-sighted political strategist. Right? These are not Muslims saying this. These are other people that have looked at the life of the Holy Prophet from a very non-biased lens and saw him not just as a religious leader, but as a political, far-sighted strategist.
Do you think they have a bit of a bias considering they're not Muslims and they don't see him as a religious figure? They see him as a individual that, existed at that time in Arabia.
On the contrary, Rasulullah, everyone knows him as a religious figure, right? But when they look at the seerah of Rasulullah, they try and look at it from a very non-biased perspective. What did he do? From an academic approach, exactly. And they saw Rasulullah, yes, he's a religious leader, but at the same time, he comes into Medina, he unites all the tribe, he facilitates a welfare, which in that time had never really happened before. In Arabia, there were monarchies, there were kingdoms during that time, but there wasn't a state like that. So Rasulullah, for example, was not just the first head of state in the religion of Islam, which of course he was, but he was the head of state within the entire region of Arabia. Right? So Rasulullah was indeed a political figurehead.
So for someone who's like myself, I'm not I try to get involved in much of current affairs and international politics as possible. What is the difference between a kingdom and obviously kingship and having sovereignty and a state? Meaning, does the state have democratic government, or why is it different having a kingdom or areas run by tribes and a state head by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
So, for example, kingdoms, monarchies are generally run by kings.
Arguably landlords, aren't they? They own majority of the land.
Exactly. And it's quite hereditary, etc. Whereas a political state, it's run by an individual that then comes and is able to bring the different people together under one umbrella.
Okay.
Right?
Interesting.
And one of the first things that the Holy Prophet did as soon as he came to Medina, solidify his position as a political head of state, and he authored a charter, Sahifat Medina, Mithaq al-Medina, known as the Constitution of Medina.
Wow. So let's take a step back, because during the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we understand him from Mecca. He does his best to introduce Islam. They're having a very difficult time. There's also the sanctions put on them. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam decides to go to Medina. Why did he choose Medina, also known as Yathrib? Were there not people living there already, especially the Jewish tribes? Were they not there already? And what was the negotiations? What was being discussed? And how was this constitution then introduced and this state was then implemented?
Okay. So that's a very interesting question. So whilst the Holy Prophet was in Mecca, he of course faced a lot of troubles, and he would go to the land of Taif, and he would propagate, and he would be pelted with stones, and it was a very hard time for Rasulullah and the Muslims that were there. However, when he would go out to places like Taif, people in the neighboring tribes and cities like Yathrib at the time would see that there is a man and he's got a message, so they would go to him. In that case, there were 7 people that came from Yathrib. They sat down with Rasulullah and they tried to understand him, and the message was amenable to them. They believed in Rasulullah, and they invited Rasulullah, saying, look, you're being persecuted in Mecca. Why don't you come to Medina? We are having battles after battles after battles for the pettiest of reasons, and we need an arbitrator. And why don't you come and help us? So Rasulullah,
these 7, had they converted to Islam? They accepted Rasulullah as the final messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or just a religious figure who can be trusted?
My reading doesn't extend to that far. All I know that there were 7 individuals.
I like that. Honest answer.
So there were 7 individuals that were interested in what the Prophet had to say. Now, whether they converted there and then, or whether they first invited the Holy Prophet and then converted, is something I need to read on.
So these 7 must have had some sort of influential power in the community, whether they were tribal leaders or respected men.
Arguably, you would be
or
able
ladies.
to say
We're
that.
not sure if they were male or female, but Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is invited to Yathrib, Medina, and he forms the constitution.
Yeah, within the first few months of getting into Medina, he authors a constitution. Now, the constitution, according to many narrations, either 47 clauses, 52 clauses, either way, it brings in the tribes of Arabs, brings in the tribes of Jews, and brings in the entire kind of number of tribes all together. And you know, one thing important as a leader is you're also able to kind of innovate in the sense that bring something new to the table. And Rasulullah brings all of these people together. He creates a new welfare system. He has clauses, for example, where if the state is in a state of war, then if you can't come in and help with your sword, then you have to pay taxes so that you're able to help one another.
Yeah.
And it made the Holy Prophet as the final arbitrator of the disputes that would be there. Again, like I said, the Holy Prophet as a leader introduced something that wasn't really prevalent at the time. Dr. Muhammad Hamidullah is an academic, a scholar, and he actually argues that the constitution that the Holy Prophet authored himself, the Mithaq, the Sahifa, was the first constitution ever in the entire world. Now, this is a huge statement for him to make.
We've had many empires, civilizations previously. Persians, Byzantines, Greeks, Romans, Alexander the Great, Aztecs.
Yes.
There's the Egyptians. There's plenty. And you're saying none of them ever formed a constitution.
Exactly. So Dr. Hamidullah argues that during the time of Aristotle, 200-300 before BC, there is something known as the monographs of Athens or the constitutions of Athens. But when you look into it properly, you realize that actually they're not enforceable charters. Rather, they were nothing more than advice books for princes or rulers at the time. Nothing enforceable. For example, the Human Rights Declaration that we have right now, what was accorded by the French Revolution or the American Charter, all of those were already accorded in the Constitution of Medina. Wow. A lot of people, for example, look at the Magna Carta of King John of England, right? As the landmark when it comes to the Constitution, 1215. Again, that was nothing more than a feudal document where a king gives his subjects rights that they already had. And so Rasulullah, according to Dr. Hamidullah, did author the first ever constitution in history.
So with the constitution that's been introduced by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what were some of the main concepts? For example, was there human rights, freedom of speech, religious pluralism? What were some of the points that was introduced which were not there before with the Arabs?
So, many people say that it is the current society that gives rights to people to freely practice their religion. Again, if we look at the Constitution of Medina, there was religious pluralism in the sense that there were Arab tribes, Muslim tribes, there were non-Muslim tribes, and there were Jewish tribes as well.
Okay.
And Rasulullah, as part of the constitution, had that everyone was able to practice their religion freely. Not only that, you are able to be judged according to your religion as well. So, for example, the Jews of the time were able to freely practice their religion.
Yes. And if they were to commit a crime, was it more of a crime against Islam or a crime against their own religion that they will be judged on their own books?
So, if it's again, so this is a twofold question. They were able to practice their own Sharia. So, for example, if they were able to have their own judges to enforce their own laws. However, if it was something against the state, because another thing that he introduced was also one ummah, one people. So if it was against the state, again, for example, in the Battle of Khaybar, there were a Jewish tribe or so that was also kind of did treason and spied against the state of Medina. And so Rasulullah, based on their own books, either banished them or executed some of the tribal heads.
Wow. Capital punishment. MashaAllah.
And this was part of their own kind of books.
You mentioned the one ummah concept was introduced in the constitution. What was the one ummah? Was this just the Muslims? Was this the Muslims and the citizens of the state? What was the responsibilities of the one ummah? Do we have a one ummah today? We have many different approaches and understandings of the word ummah.
Yeah.
So at the time of Rasulullah, let's start with there. At the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what was this introduction of one ummah?
Okay. Now you need to understand the context of the time. Now, in that time, everything revolved around tribes.
Yeah.
Right? If you did something wrong to one tribe, another tribe will seek retribution. If you want to be protected, your tribe will have to protect you. Everything revolved around tribalism. Rasulullah, without not wanting to disrespect the tribes, but he changed the pivot from the attention of the tribes and he changed it completely to the ummah. And within the parts of the constitution, he writes that you're all one ummah, as the Muslims min dunin nas, separate from the people. So what he said, and we see throughout his life, as part of his political and religious career, as part of his propagation, this concept of one ummah came in time and time again. That you may be a rich person, you may be a poor person, you may be an Arab, you may be a non-Arab, right? At the end of the day, you are all Muslims. Surah Al-Hujurat, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? You are all believers. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ. For example, the concept of brotherhood, where of course Rasulullah chose Imam Ali alayhi salam as his own brother. So this concept of brotherhood and one ummah was something that Rasulullah introduced at that point. And this was something that they had never thought they'd be able to get to that point.
Why would he introduce it? I mean, do you think it was a case of to stop tribalism, to stop one person thinking that they were superior to another, the social classes that existed at the time, to break down those boundaries and those barriers, and to we say in Islam that the only way we judge a person's character is based on his taqwa, and that is the hierarchy that we have in Islam is your taqwa and your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do you think this is why he introduced this one ummah concept?
Absolutely. From an Islamic perspective, we of course understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala judges all of us through taqwa, right? He doesn't care about rich or poor, Arab or Ajam. So from an Islamic perspective, yes, absolutely. And again, throughout Rasulullah, when he introduced the concept of brotherhood in Medina, that was the idea. However, on a political basis, we also understand as the head of state, Rasulullah wanted to make sure that everyone thinks as one, everyone acts as one. It goes back to the wisdom of Luqman, for example. If you have one branch, it'll be able to break in much quicker. But if you have 12 branches, it'll be a lot of a struggle. So for example, if you attack one individual from this ummah, it's as if you've attacked the entire ummah, right? Rather than tribalism, that is your problem, not my problem.
Let's bring this more contemporary and today, this concept of one ummah. You personally, do you see it? Because today we have so many different denominations of of Islam. The Shia are split into three. The Sunnis are Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and they're also if I can remember my Kalam lessons properly, we have, the Deobandi, the Naqshbandi, we have, the Ash'arites, Mu'tazilites, and then furthermore, it just splits into different aqaid, different fiqh. Are we considered one ummah? Should we consider ourselves to be one ummah? Or is it just based on the walaya of Amir al-Mu'mineen?
At the end of the day, academic discussions are extremely important from a theological perspective. That yes, this is what we believe, this is how we believe, where does your belief come from? Let's sit academically. At the end of the day, when we take this a little bit further, for example, we have traditions from Rasulullah who says what? Oh, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, that if one part of your body hurts, the rest of your parts of body should also hurt. Or for example, two believers are like two hands trying to wash one another, in the sense you can't wash your hand properly just with one hand. Rasulullah is stating, forget your tribalism, let's not stay divided, let's stay as one ummah.
Bringing it to today, do you think we are doing that? Those ideas, those dreams, those aspirations of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of one ummah, where one Muslim is thinking, is feeling, is up to date, and always, has his attention and awareness towards other Muslims globally. At that time, Medina was very small. Well, it was a city, but compared to today, the ummah, if you consider every Muslim to be part of the ummah, is from as far as Hawaii all the way, going eastbound to the Far East. Indonesia having one of the highest populations of Muslims. And as you are aware, with global affairs, there's so much happening with Muslims all over the world. Are we giving justice to the ummah that once was with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
I think, like you rightly pointed out in the question, that this is an aspirational level where we need to get to.
That's the word, aspirational.
Aspirational, as in we can always do better. Now, in the geopolitical states that are currently happening in the world, whether it's Palestine, whether it's Gaza, whether it's Yemen, whether it's any other place, for example, yes, there's a lot of work happening, but there could be so much more that could be happening. Yes, maybe the masses are getting together, but maybe the political heads of some states also need to do a little bit more.
Lift their fingers.
Exactly, lift their fingers.
Yeah, I hear that. I mean, like, it's very, very difficult. Not just in the Middle East. I mean, we've seen even places where genocide is happening of non-Muslim backgrounds. We as Muslims we don't stop at our own. Our concerns does go past our ummah as well. Our ummah is a priority, but it does go past that. Wherever we see injustice, wherever we see injustice, we should be getting involved to speak out and stop, these atrocities.
Yeah.
Coming back to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's brought in this constitution, he's brought in this one ummah. What were some of the strategies he used? I mean, you could say he made peace with the Jews, the tribal Jews, and so forth. We've seen him also make a treaty, you could say, going back to Mecca before the conquest and taking it over. But, arguably shaking hands with the enemy, one would say. We've had this with others accused Imam Hussein alayhi salam of I won't need to use my words carefully here, but Imam Hussein alayhi salam having a treaty with Muawiyah lanatullah alayhi. So what were some of the strategies and ideas that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had? So what was some of the foresight that he saw in taking out these tactics?
So like I mentioned, many of the academics look at Prophet Rasulullah as a foresighted individual, right? So another treaty that Rasulullah made other than the Constitution of Medina was something that we've probably heard of, the Treaty of Hudaybiyah.
Yes, there's a ayah in regards to that.
Yeah, exactly. It happened 6th year after Hijrah, where Rasulullah, with a few people, 1,400, wanted to go, wanted to perform the Umrah. Right. And during that time, although the Holy Kaaba was the kind of epicenter for the Muslims, but it was also the epicenter of the Mushrik. And they had all sorts of idols over there.
Yeah.
So for them, that was also their pantheon
Who were the custodians at the time? When Rasulullah came back, who were the custodians?
it was the idolaters,
Okay.
the polytheists,
All right,
right?
fair enough.
So Rasulullah now wanting to perform Umrah in one of the 4 months where even the pagan Arabs wouldn't fight.
Yeah.
However, he gets to the outskirts of Mecca. The Quraysh realize, they send envoys and they start sending envoys to one another. And at the end of the day, they say that, look, you can't come, right? So they now send a negotiator who has a level of conditions, and they start hammering out the details on what that negotiation is going to look like. At the end of the day, one of the key points of the negotiation was, you Muslims need to go back. You can't perform Umrah.
Yeah.
Fine. You come back. You can come back next year. The maximum you can stay is 3 days. You can't come with your weapons. The maximum you can bring is, for example, your swords. Okay. Another condition was that if someone in Mecca converts to Islam and they come to Medina, you send them back.
Okay.
But from Medina, if someone comes to Mecca, we won't send anyone back.
Okay.
So there were really arduous conditions. Other conditions were, for example, the tribes can now freely interact with one another, including the Muslims, and so on and so forth. Now, many of the Muslims looked at this treaty of Hudaybiyah, and just like you said, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, they would throw the musalla at him saying, why have you disgraced us Muslims? Similarly to Rasulullah, they would say, by all means, this is a defeat, right?
Yeah.
And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals a verse of the Holy Quran, Inna fatahna laka fatham mubina, that this is a manifest victory. He didn't say it for Badr or Uhud. He said it for this. What was the foresightedness of the Holy Prophet to sign a treaty that to the outside world looks like a defeat? Number one, Quraysh now looks at Rasulullah not as a fugitive, not as a rebel, but as an equal.
Yes.
And they look at the state of Medina as a competitive state.
Recognize.
That's one foresight that Rasulullah had. Number two, now people were able to practice Islam a lot more freely. It was a recognized thing. For example, now people are able to
perform Umrah is on.
Well, exactly. People are able to make alliances with the Muslim state, Medina, and because of that, the religion of Islam spread a lot more easily. And so there were people in their hundreds transforming to the religion of Islam. Now, another thing that the Rasulullah had a foresighted for, and again, it's been articulated by an academic scholar by the name of Fred Donner. He says what? Medina was very hostile at the time. In the north, you had the Jews of Khaybar, for example. In the south, you had Mecca, and Medina was right bang in the middle of it. So if they couldn't have a battle at two fronts. So Rasulullah, by having this treaty, was able to pacify the Quraysh at least for a while, so that he only has one kind of battlefront. And what happens, just like the Quraysh, they looked at Rasulullah saying, oh, he's been defeated. This is a success for us. Same with Khaybar. The people at Khaybar, they saw Islam as becoming weak. So they started attacking the pastures and the villages of Medina. The son of Abu Dhar, for example, was martyred. And so now Rasulullah was able to put his full attention to Khaybar. And he was able to neutralize the threat within 1 year. Within 18 months of signing the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, the conquest of Mecca happened. Because the Meccans didn't do their part of the treaty. And again, 10,000 people took over the city of Mecca without bloodshed. Now, this is the political, strategic foresight of Rasulullah. He was able to achieve so much in such little time.
Do you think that the success of the conquest of Mecca was down to foresight? Was it down to sheer numbers? Or was it more of a power struggle where, now Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa has come to Mecca, in front of the Quraysh, and he's like, I've got this many men with me now. You haven't honored our agreement, and now we're coming to take over. What can we learn from that conquest today? Because the Muslim world is absolutely humongous. There's 2 billion of us?
Yes. Yeah.
Can we not
1.62 billion, yeah.
I'm not saying we go out and conquer the world and have our own empire, but surely our political wants, our political, I won't say desires, but more of a thing that we should have a bigger voice and arguably more to bargain with on the international table, considering we have greater numbers, considering we have greater natural resources, considering we have more to provide towards the world economy. What can we learn from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi in terms of international relations today that we can meet our demands as Muslims?
So, for many people who say that the religion of Islam was spread by the sword, Rasulullah, by signing this treaty of Hudaybiyah, says that, look, peace always has to come first. We're not into, dialogue, right? Diplomacy. The battles before were all defensive in the sense Badr, Uhud, against Quraysh, but they were all defensive in their manner. So Rasulullah, kind of what may look like a defeat, was able to show that no, peace always comes first. But when the other side break the clause of the treaty, Rasulullah also showing that, look, you've broken the peace treaty. Now we need to come back. And at the same time, again, we're not going to rule with the sword. Over there, it was a day of forgiveness. He forgave most of the people within the conquest of Mecca. And similarly, a lesson for us, the Quran says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ, that in the life of the Holy Prophet is an exemplar for you. So yes, Rasulullah was a religious individual. He was a spiritual leader. We need to emulate him in his religiosity and his spirituality, but also in his political activism, right? We need to be, as Muslims, politically involved because decisions are going to be made regardless. We need to be ensured that we're part of the table where decisions are being made.
But as who and as what? As an ummah or as a small community? For example, like you said, decisions are being made. We need to be at the table to make sure these decisions don't negatively impact or implement anything towards our lives and others. So when we sit at the table, do we sit at the table as Muslims or do we sit at the table as, the Khoja community from North London and what impacts them and their lives politically? So how should we be thinking in terms of political awareness and political presence?
At the end of the day, you can't really split Islam and politics. They're all parts hand in hand. So for example, if we are involved in the wider political sphere, the principles of our values, our principles will always be there. But that ensures that we have a voice. Now, say for example, if Muhammad Ali, Zain or whoever is part of the wider political sphere, he is now part of that table where decisions are being made. Automatically, his values are going to be there. Yeah. Whatever decisions he is now part of will, knowingly or unknowingly, affect everyone that is related to that.
I see. So when we have our local, MP come into the mosque to give a talk and, he wants to encourage people to vote, and especially his campaign or her campaign. I mean, we as Muslims, we as Shia Muslims of Amir al-Mu'mineen, what is our position? What do we do? What are we looking out for? Should we actually get involved or should we be like, you know what? It doesn't matter who's in charge. It's going to be the same rubbish, different color, but it's the same thing. And we don't really have a voice.
As individuals, as Muslims, as a community, it's extremely important that we're able to engage with our wider community, right? If, as again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that I will not change a community until they themselves change. Now, we can't be sitting in our couches at home complaining that this is not right, that is not right. If something is not right, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says you need to get up and do something about it. Whether it's being politically active, you standing up as an MP yourself, or for example, showing that the Muslim vote counts or a community vote counts, and allowing the members of parliament, your representatives, to actually stand by you. And if they're not doing what they pledged, then you move your vote. Either you stand up yourself or you move your vote to show that, no, you as an individual are active. We are citizens and we want to be heard.
Interesting. What can be done more? I mean, look, others would argue we have Islamic governments right now, whether they be Shia or Sunni. We have Islamic governments. We should be supporting these governments because they're representing the Muslims. I mean, others would say, Najaf Hawza very famously doesn't like to get involved with politics. It has done. I'm not saying it doesn't. It has done. But traditionally, it doesn't like to get involved in politics. That's what's helped it survive and thrive, especially during the times of dictatorships and so forth. So where do we stand with that?
For example, the Najaf is a slightly different scenario in the sense that the Hawza of Najaf, they also have a foresight. They also have a strategy in place that, look, it's not a short game, it's a long game. If you're going to get involved right now, what we stand for may not last, right? Their context is arguably slightly different. On the flip side, you may be able to argue that, no, if we stay quiet, then what may happen is the other side may get emboldened, oppression might be there, and justice, for example, is a responsibility not of everyone else, but your and my responsibility. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, chapter 57, verse number 25, لَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا رُسُلُكُمْ بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ, that indeed we have sent Rasul, messengers with clear proofs. It doesn't stop there. Allah continues, وَأَنزَلْنَا مَعْهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْمِيزَانِ. Not only that, we've sent him with books, with scriptures, and with the balance. Why? لِيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ, so that the people themselves may maintain, establish justice. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying here is what? I have sent perfect individuals like Rasulullah. And with that, I have sent the perfect tools and equipment, the perfect book, the perfect mizan with clear proofs. So what? For him to establish justice? No. For the imams to establish justice? No. For the teachers, for the judges to establish justice? No. Rasulullah and imam's role is to facilitate justice. It's your and my responsibility to establish justice. What they do is they awaken something that is already within our hearts. Yes. Right? Justice is your and my responsibility. You, for example, for those of us that have kids, one of the first things that our child will say when he's able to construct sentences? 4 words. This is not fair. Right? You give him any toys. You give him any toys, you give him any sweets, he will happily, meticulously count one by one to make sure that you've been fair, you've been just. Yes. Justice is something that's innate with us.
Oh my God, I'm thinking about my nephews and nieces. He's got this one, his one's bigger, and I didn't have that. And
justice is everyone's responsibility.
Yeah. I get that. Oh my God. Man. So, Mr. Muraj, we are coming close towards the end of our discussion. Fabulous insight. I guess a lot of people don't realize how politically active Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was. We didn't even go on to, for example, the welfare system, military and protecting the state, taxes, freedom of speech and things like this. However, what are some lessons that you'd like the public to take away from the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
So, we need to understand Rasulullah as a holistic individual. Like I said, he's an exemplar in all aspects of our life, including politics. And politics shouldn't really be a dirty word for us, in the sense that we should embrace it and we should follow the seerah of Rasulullah, get involved in all aspects of politics, and really serve. At the end of the day, whether it's community, whether it's a wider society, at the end of the day, the aim is to serve, right? And service is a universal characteristic that Rasulullah himself stood for, but also led by example. And throughout his seerah, we see that Rasulullah wasn't a politician who would sit as a leader and expect everyone to get on with it. No, even as a commander-in-chief, he would be in the front lines. He would take consultation, but he would always have the idea of service. Service is something that's inculcated in all walks of life. For example, the Bible, the Gospel of Luke, it says what? Serve one another, right? John Maxwell, for example, 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, or 21 indispensable laws of leadership. He says that a leader is one that is able to serve. The amount of a leader is not how many people serve him, but how many
someone
he is
can
able to serve.
Yeah.
So therefore, Rasulullah, as a politician as well, the whole idea is you're able to serve one another. And that's the crux of the seerah of Rasulullah, on how can I be of service to the next person next to me and to the wider society.
Mr. Mohammad Ali Muraj, thank you so much for coming on Shia
It's been a
Vibes.
pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Enjoyed. I mean, we would love to have you back to discuss more on the political aspect and of the lives of not just only Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but hopefully the Ummah as well.
Absolutely.
And the political impact they had, specifically Amirul Mu'mineen, because his campaign was very, very interesting. Thank you so much once again.
Excellent.
And thank you for you guys for joining us on this episode of Shia Vibes. Inshallah, we'll be back again with a new topic to discuss. I want to do a big shout out to the team that are behind the screen. We have Muhammad Fahad, we have Muhammad Rida Ma'ash, Salman Bhai, Amir Raza, and inshallah, all the editing team. Some of them don't want their names to be mentioned, which is fine. Shout out to Hussein Sukhni and also Saif Ali Khan, who are my normal co-hosts, and also special co-hosts that we also have, like Minhal Khafaji. This has been Shia Vibes, and inshallah we'll see you very, very soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.